My guest today is Caroline Goodall, internationally known as a leading actress who has starred in some of the biggest blockbusters of the 1990s, including Schindler's List, Hook, Cliffhanger, and Disclosure, as well as White Squall and The Princess Diaries. Now, as a writer, in addition to The Bay of Silence for Radiant Pictures, credits include screen adaptations of Rupert Thomson's Dreams of Leaving for HKM Films, and she is a former member of the Royal Shakespeare Company and the National Theatre of Great Britain. Now, Caroline appeared extensively on stage before being chosen by Steven Spielberg to star in Hook in 1991, and she was nominated for Best Actress by the Australian Film Institute in 1990 for Cassidy, and again in 1995 for Hotel Sorrento. She has recently appeared in the feature film So Torn by Freddy MacDonald, and she was also an associate producer on that film as well. And she plays one of the lead roles in what I think is one of the best all-time short films that I have ever seen and have had the honor of seeing the second time around by director Jack Howard, which we will be talking about today. So let's welcome internationally acclaimed and award-winning actress Caroline Goodall to the show. Welcome.
Hi, Ward. That is a really wonderful intro, and thank you very much. I'm very honored.
Well, you're very, very welcome. And that was the short version. But I want to go back in time just a bit before we talk about one of the best short films I've ever seen. But in 1991, you were cast in Steven Spielberg's Hook with Dustin Hoffman and Robin Williams, as well as Julia Roberts and Maggie Smith, to name a few. What was the casting process like with Steven Spielberg?
It was fantastic. Um, it was interesting because I'd been in Hollywood just a couple of months, and I'd actually done a play. I'd done a play down at the SCR. I'd done Secret Rapture, which is a David Hare play, and I felt very comfortable in that kind of zone because that's exactly what I'd been doing. I had been doing some film before that. In fact, my very first film was with Tom Hanks, which we shot. It was called oh, what was that? I can't remember. We shot it every time we say goodbye. That was it. I'd kind of gone out to Hollywood really to be with my then boyfriend, who was sort of Anglo-American. And I had this dream that I'd just sort of sit and point doom and kind of write and watch the whales. And, he'd be very busy being a movie star. And then I did get offered some work, which was wonderful because, of course, inevitably you go along and you say, maybe I should see an agent, maybe I should be doing something like this, but I'm not really sure if anyone would want me. And then I found myself, doing theater that made me very comfortable. And in those days, casting directors actually went to the theater and saw you. And it just so happened, I think, that they were looking for an English actress to play opposite Robin in Hook. The Peter Pan story, and they'd been searching far and wide, actually, little did I know. And I got this call from my agent who said, whoa, where are you? And I said, well, I'm actually packing. I'm going back to London. I've got stuff to do. And he said, do you think you've got time to pop in and go see someone this afternoon? I said, oh, okay, yeah, who is it? He went, Steven Spielberg. I went, okay. And then my immediate, I've got nothing to wear, what am I going to wear? So anyway, I of course, made my way there, completely out of my depth. But at the same time, I think because I was out of my depth, there was a sort of relaxation. And we met and we talked, and I had just come back from Australia. So I actually had some stuff to show him, because in those days it was very hard to kind of, have footage because it was on video. Wasn't, we didn't even put it on DVDs in those days. And so then he said, yeah, you know what, it'd be really nice, if you're around, maybe you could come and meet Robin, and we could do, are you okay with improv? And I said, yeah, okay, I could definitely try. And I had done some stand-up at the Edinburgh Festival a couple of years before, so I was kind of okay with improv, and I kind of liked it. But I then found myself. I'm going to cut to the chase here. I found myself in a room with Steven Spielberg, literally with a little high-8 camera, and Robin Williams, and they said, well, what about this and da da da, and here's a kind of a scene. Could you kind of talk around it? We don't actually have any words. And we started, and I'm improvising with Robin Williams. I was just like,
Well, Robin Williams doesn't have an off switch.
well, this was the interesting thing, because at one point I'm rattling on and I suddenly stop and I say, "You're not saying anything." And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, well, I've got the job." I've got the
Oh,
job.
I've known people who have been around Robin Williams, and they always told me he was always on. You couldn't shut him off, and
Not
nobody does improv better than Robin Williams.
No one does improv better than Robin Williams. And that was the beauty when we actually got on set, because the beauty of having Steven Spielberg, who I still, he's just the most amazing man. And I'm just so grateful because he really made me fall in love with movies. I mean, he gave me a movie career, but also he really made me understand what it is to be in a film, what movies are all about. Because when you sit next to a director at that level, and he's so generous, yeah, well, I'm going to do this, and you see it, and this is the reason I'm doing that, and we've got a crane that's going to come over here. And he also used to like operating himself, so he'd often operate the camera as well. He really loved that whole every single aspect of movie making. It was
Well,
still joyful for him, and same
what?
for Robin.
Well, what was the greatest advice Steven Spielberg ever gave you?
Motion picture. Motion picture. And I thought, that's interesting. And then I realized that his camera never stops moving. And if you just look at his movies, he's telling the story through the movement of the camera, as well as with the storytelling and the acting. And that's how you somehow get that alchemy, because it's actually the camera working with the artist to create an emotion in the audience. And that's sometimes why the audience go, I'm crying. I didn't know I was crying. Why am I crying? And that's the gift. And so just, weird things like that, but they stick with you. Loads of things, etiquette on set, how you deal with people. You're always kind. You're always as generous as you can possibly be. Everything is always interesting and exciting. And even if there's 1,000 things going wrong, which there always are, you just kind of get past them. He's very loyal. He very kindly, hired me a second time. But also, you then are fortunate enough to find that you've got a lot of the same crew. So it'll be Ron Judkins. It used to be Ron Judkins who would be doing the sound, or be perhaps the same cinematographer. We didn't actually at that point, but he likes to surround himself with people who he knows and who he can trust and who he knows at the top of the game.
So,
So
what was the casting process like for Schindler's List?
he rang me up.
Oh, he already knew.
Yeah, he had. Well, um, he just had an idea, and then I got this call. I was actually working in Canada, and I just got this call, and in the hotel, because of course no cell phones, and it was just like, "Could you hold with Steven Spielberg, please? Can you hold with Steven Spielberg, please?" I was like, "What?" Um, and then he came on the line. He said, "How's your German?" And I said, "Jawohl." And he said, "Look, if you can, could you just kind of prepare something for me? And maybe I just need to really hear your German accent. I'm doing this thing." And I had, of course, read the trades, and I knew exactly what he was doing. And I was just, it's like, oh my God, lot. And I was cast quite late, actually. So I ended up getting on a plane literally within a week, 10 days. And he was so hilarious. He said, I can't, we can't offer you much money, but we can offer you fourth billing. Billing in Hollywood, very, very important, as you well know.
Yeah, well, that film won 7 Oscars. So
Mm.
what was it like to be part of a film that will forever be part of cinematic history?
Um, an extraordinary honor. Uh, you know, I think it hit me when m- m- my my husband's Italian. He's a cinematographer himself. He's Terry Gilliam's cinematographer mainly, but he also works with other people. But so we have a place in Italy, and we ended up putting the kids as sort of in their teenage years uh, in school in Italy, in local school, in this little town, far away from Hollywood, and their history book. Actually, there was a photograph of me and Ben Kingsley, um, and I think Liam walking. There's a wonderful shot of us walking through the factory towards the end of the movie, and I, and obviously there was information about the Holocaust and everything, and that it hit me then because I thought, goodness, this is a part of history that we're contributing to. And it is a part of not just film vernacular and film history, it's part of all our history. And that really made me incredibly honored. But apart from the fact it was an extraordinary experience, which I will never, ever forget, and a film that we saw it again in, there was the 25 years, I think, and there was an enormous screening in New York as part of the Tribeca Film Festival. And we went, and I'd not seen it on the big screen for literally since I think it did come out. And it was amazing just how it stood the test of time completely. But also it hit me that it's every every frame's a masterpiece. I mean, I know that, but I just to be able to sit back and see it without kind of worrying about, oh my God, there's my face coming up, or whatever. But just to see it in terms of the storytelling, the framing, the production value, everything about it, and there's just not one false note, not one.
Yeah.
And I think that is extraordinary. So I think when you've got a deep passion and understanding of what story it is you want to tell, um, I think he really, yeah, he found his purpose there. I really do believe that.
Yeah, it's and for a film to come out at that time in black and white, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Spielberg was never afraid to either go back or push into the future.
No.
His visions were completely different than a lot of other filmmakers and directors out there, and I think that's just what makes him the best out there. So here's Schindler's List winning 7 Oscars. Uh, how crazy was Oscar night?
Well, ironically, I was actually very pregnant and about to give birth. So I ended up actually having a pretty fantastic time. I didn't go to the Oscars. I went to the Oscar party at Ambling, which was massive, of course, because everybody, of course, couldn't go to the Oscars, went to the party. So we just had the best time. And oh, it was Gemma Bourne. No, my daughter was just born. Sorry, that's awful. Yeah, because she was born in February and it was March, wasn't it? Yeah, she was just born. And it was actually by far the best way to do it. It was just fantastic. And of course, a lot of the crew, a lot of the, cast were there and everything. And, we were just really, really able to just have a blast. I think, Oscars are fabulous. I think it's lovely to be there, but it's nerve wracking for everybody and a bit prim and proper. And then everyone really just kind of wants to go. And it was quite funny that night. I got a call from Liam, I got a call from Rafe, and I got a call from Ben. And I was it the next morning, and they all just said, I said, how was it? And they said, well, it was fine. But, you know, we felt weird. You end up feeling just a bit weird, you know, everyone just, sorry, feels a bit weird. Because it's just such a huge, uh,
But did it kick your career into high gear then, didn't it?
oh, I think, yeah. Oh my God, yes. I mean, I was very, very fortunate. I got, as Stephen did call it, he said it's like the good housekeeping seal of approval. So you get the good housekeeping seal of approval from working with amazing directors. So I was then very fortunate in that I was, able to go and meet, Ridley Scott and work with him on White Squall, with Jeff Bridges, and, with Barry Levinson in Disclosure. And of course, Gary Marshall, Princess Diaries, and Rennie and Cliffhanger, which was a total blast. That was the second $100 million movie ever made.
I loved Cliffhanger, and and it was, that was the time when actors pulled the movie. So you had Stallone, and that's all anybody needed to hear. And they would rush to the theater. It's like now, Tom Cruise, you rush to the theater. And I cannot believe that after all of these years, they're now discussing a sequel or a remake of Cliffhanger.
I know, I know. I died, so it's fine. There's no way that they'll be
I
asking me to
yes, I
come
know. Yeah, yeah. So did John Lithgow.
back. John, yeah, I think he's still. I don't know. Yeah, I think John did survive. Um,
No, he
but
died in that helicopter.
Oh, he died. Of course, yes. I think we all died in the end. I remember reading this script, and I was very keen, actually, to do something that was completely, a complete 180 from what I had been doing. Because, you did get, you think, okay, how many more mothers and wives are they going to be asking me to do? Because once, they're all,
Well, let
it's,
me ask you this. You have appeared on screen with some of the most famous, if not the most famous actors in the world. Who did you like working with the most?
you can't ask me that.
I know you can't play favorites with the A list, right?
No. Well, I have to say, I think Robin, who, God rest his soul. I think, yeah, I think Robin's up there. Because we were very lucky, because also the film went on and on and on. We had T-shirts saying the first 100 days. It was just something else. And he was just the most wonderful, warm hearted person. But also, we were just on a pirate movie set, and Dustin as well. And it was just so cool. And of course, we had Maggie Smith, who, was just incredible. Um, Very caustic, I have to say, as well. She just, I remember, God,
Yeah, but I like, but I've always loved her humor.
oh, humor's amazing. I remember there was one where we're waiting around for some lighting, because actually the beautiful thing in those days is you did wait around for lighting, and they were so careful how they lit you, and this and that for a close-up or something else, just make everyone just look not necessarily great, but them, how they should be, how their character should be. But anyway, we're waiting for some lighting, and it was quite a big setup. And she looked over, there was Stephen, and there was Robin, and there was Dustin. And she just looked at them and she said, two bloody Oscars, and I've still got a mortgage. Work at them.
It sounds like
Work
her
at them.
character.
Two bloody Oscars, and I've still got a mortgage.
That is hilarious because
Between the Brits and the American stars.
she sounds like that when she was in Downton Abbey. It's not a stretch. It wasn't a stretch for her. She was probably being herself.
Well, of course, it's a stretch, but she knows how to do it so well. So her timing is unbelievable. That kind of way she delivers a line. But did you have, was it California Suite as well that she was in? Was it California Suite, that movie? where
I'd have to look it up.
she's with, it's a comedy, and I think it's mid-70s, late, 70s, and Michael Caine's in it as well, and Michael Caine is playing her husband, and they're going over to Hollywood because she's actually going to get an Oscar. She's an actress, and she's so brilliant in it. Brilliant. I think Jane Fonda's in it too. It's one of the funniest movies. So, and then of course, she was Desdemona and Othello and and then we've seen her on the stage non-stop. She's just extraordinary, extraordinary. Yeah.
Well, tell me how you got cast in Jack Howard's short film the second time
Ah,
around.
oh God, I love this movie so much. Thank you for letting me talk about it. Jack and I met in, I think it was 2018, on the set of a television series called Bulletproof, that was we were shooting in Manchester at the time. And he was there for one day. He was playing a doctor, because Jack also is an actor as well as a writer and a director. And also, he, of course, had this very successful YouTube channel. He was one of the early YouTubers. And he's just got such a wonderful, open way about him. And so we just started chatting, and he said, da, da, and then I twigged and I said, hold on a second. My kids love you. You're Jack, and I always forget the other guy's name. And I immediately said, a bit like a fan, actually. I said, oh, look, hang on. I'm just going to, kids, look who it is. It's Jack Howard. Look who it is. And they're like, oh. um, and so anyway, we just got chatting. And I was actually part of helping put together a film festival in Newcastle at the time. And my job was to sort of find victims to come up and talk about, movies and movie making and da, da, da. And I had this great idea that I wanted to put Ian Ogilvy, who's a good friend of mine, who's also a wonderful writer, who writes books as well. But he was star of The Saint, which is like a classic television series in the UK, and he and I had done a movie together a few years back as well with Nia Vardalos, and we became mates. And I thought, that would be interesting to have sort of Jack, who's young, and then Ian, who's a bit more old school, and just put them together because they're both so funny, and just see how they go. And they just had a blast, and everybody loved it. It was really good. So we just sort of stayed in touch. And then out of the blue, he rang me and he said, I'm sort of directing now as well. And I said, well, I assume you are, because you always directed your YouTube videos. And he said, can I send you a script? It's for a short. I've never made a short. Basically because I don't know. They've become more of a thing. They weren't a thing before. They're now a bit more of a thing. And so I said, well, yeah, I'd be delighted. And so he sent it over, and I found it so interesting and quite elliptical, actually, at first when you read it, because it's like, what is going on? And so I rang him and I said, okay, can we talk about this a bit? Because I think it's about this. It's a bit sci-fi, but is it? And it's also kind of about mental health, and it's just quite deep. And I think for an actor, what's wonderful is you're thinking, well, this is actually an opportunity for a two-hander, where we're actually on screen for, I think it's maybe 15 minutes. You don't often on camera anymore get that chance. A lot of it's television, but even in film, each scene is 3 minutes long. You're kind of pushing the story along as well. Your character's doing X, someone else is doing Y. And you're part of the kaleidoscope of the whole thing. But to be able to have 15 minutes where you can dig in to a character, where you can turn on a sixpence, when you can sort of just change gears very gently and just sort of shape a story and a three-act structure between two people, which it is. I mean, I think the beauty of this film and why it works, apart from the fact it's very well directed and very well lit, um, is because it is a proper story. It's like a short story, a short film. It's not masquerading as a calling card for for a feature, which a lot of films are, or it's not an idea that doesn't really have an ending and slithers to a halt, because I think that often can happen with a short film as well, is they don't really know how to finish it, or they don't have, it's like, oh God, I haven't got the time to really take this where I want to. So it's going to do this. So they might use tricks to sort of try and make it work. And it never quite gets where it needs to. And I think what Jack has managed to do is create an absolutely beautiful short film that doesn't need to be any longer. It's not supposed to be any longer. And it's just a beautiful short story that is wonderfully directed. And Hannah and I just had a wonderful time because they just gave us the space to be able to work together in the way that hopefully, it would work out.
You know, when I first saw this film, and I told Jack, I said, I've seen this film so many times, I've lost count.
Really?
And when I saw it the first time, I was so taken back. And I
Huh.
was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, will the audience feel what I'm feeling? Will they actually see what is actually happening on screen? Will they hear what is being said? Because I was just, I wanted the audience to grab every little piece of this because I thought it was one of the greatest love stories on film.
Mm,
It had
mm,
a it had a cinematic subtlety that
mm,
took the audience to the very end. And
mm.
I told Jack, I said, nothing, and you just said it, nothing in this film is forced. It's this
No.
very slow dance between two people. Everything about the film is subtle, yet powerful, but
Mm,
delicate.
mm.
For you, and you know what I'm talking about, was it magic or did it just seem that way?
Oh, well, I'm glad it seemed that way. Well, okay, we shot it over 3 nights. We couldn't get into this cafe, which I have to say they barely had to do anything to. It was just, but he said, I found the location. It's in Ealing. It's actually not far from where I live. And it's perfect. And and the guy just letting me have it. And so, but we couldn't start, we couldn't get in there until about 6:30 because of course the cafe, had to close. We were lucky in that there was another cafe next door, ironically, but completely kind of like more of a juice bar, that they let us use as well. So we could kind of use that as a green room and a place to change and to store things because there was no space at all in this cafe. Um, he was obsessed with a rain machine, understandably, because I really understand that, the look that he needed it to have. And of course, I arrive absolutely dripping wet, with mascara, it's like looking like hell. And I stay that way all the way through. Um, and the rain machine broke, it refused to work. So the first night, actually, we'd lost a lot of time. And so Hannah and I said, well, we just better run the lines because they're still fiddling with this rain machine. And then kind of towards the end of the night, and it's like maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, we're tired. We've just been um, and I just said, well, what do you And he said, well, I think, yeah, we just shoot that way. We'll just shoot that way. Do you mind kind of, I'd had this idea that, I'd be coming back for your reaction and then we'd do this, but we're going to have to do it all on Hannah. I said, that's absolutely perfect as far as I'm concerned. Keep it all on Hannah. You don't need to see me ever. But what was fine was I've said, yeah, don't you worry. Done this before. We piggyback the scenes that are required, and you just keep it going. And so we were able to get a certain amount done on the first night that we needed to do, which then made it a little easier for the Saturday and the Sunday. But yes, it was 3 straight nights, not leaving until 6 o'clock in the morning. And then, you try and get as much sleep as you can and then you're back. But, it was only 3 nights. So that's the beauty of a short as well. But that's still 5 minutes a day, which is quite a lot for a movie, especially if you're trying to really place things. And I think this was the thing. We did have a rehearsal before, and I was really, really keen for that. I said, we really need to sit down and talk through this. I don't know. I don't want any spoilers on this, but I had a lot of questions, as you might understand, which is like, well, okay, I can say, where did I get that from? Did I arrive with it? And, this whole idea of me having to leave, is that because, I'm having you can imagine all the thoughts I'm having, because of where I've come from. So, in order to know yourself, you have to kind of think, okay, of all those things. You have to think about what happened since, why you made that decision to do what you did, to go and find her, all of those things, and what it was, of course, you wanted to say. And would it work when you got there? So that tentativeness at the beginning, and the kind of the knowledge and yet the no knowledge, all those things were kind of had to go around, but also then be thrown away. So there was, in a strange way, a lot of kind of work and prep had to happen. Whereas with Hannah, she was like, I'm not meant to know anything. I'm just reacting to you as you come in, this kind of slightly crazy person who I'm feeling a bit sorry for and need a cup of tea. And then there's something that's sparking in me, but I'm not sure what it is. So we actually had very different MOs coming into those scenes. And I think that tension also was probably quite interesting. And that's sort of also what the audience picks up on.
You know,
Is
yeah, because and there's a couple of scenes I'm going to get to, and but and I told Jack this. There's the camera shot where Hannah, who's playing Elle, is standing in the kitchen. She's standing there because there's that box of umbrellas, but she hasn't brought them out yet. And the camera shot is focused through the square hole in the wall. So you see the stainless steel side, the audience side. And you're standing, the camera, you're standing dead center of that square, but also behind you is the front door, which has a square window, and you're framed there. And I told Jack, I said, when I looked at that shot, it told me 2 things. One, it was looking into the past, and it was looking into the future at the same time.
Wow.
And not a sound was, and in that moment of that scene, there's not one sound. And I'm looking, and I literally paused it, and I went, does he know what he just did? Because because I read the log line, but I didn't notice that shot until the second time I watched the film, because usually I'm going to watch the film the first time, watch the beginning to the end. I just want to see what the reaction is, and then before I go back and dissect it to death. But when I saw that shot, I was like,
I love the way you dissect it. That's fantastic. I don't know, what did he say? Because He was very, actually, no, he was very clear about what he wanted and where we were to stand and what we were to do. So, I mean, I think maybe naturally, when you're, framing wise, that makes total sense because, of course, you want everything in the center of the shot. And if you are looking through something, you want to be able to line something else up and that person inside it as well. And also you've got, I think it was, the squares on the floor as well. It was all, that there's that formality.
But
Um,
it played in,
but
but that one shot
play
played into the
with a
plot.
metaphor. Yeah, totally into the plot. That's beautiful. I'm going to have another look now myself.
But I want to ask you about a particular scene, and I
Mm.
could watch this scene forever.
Wow.
There is a scene in the film where you are sitting at the cafe table talking with Hannah.
Mm.
You're holding her hand.
Mm.
The camera holds still with only you in the frame. It's a close up.
Mm.
You are holding a deep hurt inside, and the
Mm-hmm.
silence you show in that scene with just the emotion
Mm.
is very, very powerful. And you can see it through your eyes. It's kind of like I've heard where acting coaches or actors would say, if the emotion is to cry, but the job is you're trying not to cry, because then you see that emotion. You see that it's like it's almost like a force on the inside that's trying to push out, but you're trying to keep it in. And I see that through your eyes. What were you thinking about during that scene?
Oh, I think all of that. Um, I think it was a very special moment then because I think it was probably about 5 o'clock in the morning. And, but also when you get to that point, and I think because we're fortunate enough to have, wow, I always call it wind it up and let it go. Because it is, the rhythm is going where it is, and we've just been over there and I've just told her about when I fell in love, and I'm coming back, and I actually think it's about forgiveness and apology, and it's really, I think that's the moment that's encapsulated where she wants to say everything and she can't, where she wants to say, I'm sorry and I forgive you. But also, I think within that, and no spoilers, she's sort of trying to get a message across, which
She's
is
warning her.
yes, if there's anything I can do in this moment that can change things, I hope it does. But of course, she's not sure.
Yeah,
And,
and here's the
no.
subtlety. Here's the subtlety of the dialogue in that one scene.
Mm,
I didn't I didn't pick it up the first two times I saw it,
mm,
but then it clicked because I don't want to give it away. There's a line in which you say, all I will say is that it leads to um, a mental health element in the film. It's so
mhm,
subtle, but what makes it so powerful is if the audience will sit there and they listen, they'll literally go, "Oh, I get it." Because then you
mhm.
realize your character is warning Elle.
And she's been gone now more than we're together. It's weird. There's just so much I wish I could have said. I'm sorry. Yeah. I think that is the place because it's interesting. I did see it on the big screen. And we were really lucky because Mark Kermode, who you know is the wonderful film critic of The Guardian, has actually got a lovely podcast himself. He came and he did the Q&A. We were like, wow, that was so kind of him. And but so as a result, it was actually kind of rather a special screening in that Jack, of course, we'd managed to get a bunch of people in, and it felt like proper thing. And I think I felt that around me, that kind of little gasp, and and it was the first time I'd seen it on the big screen. I think I'd seen Link. Um, and I was completely involved in it myself as well. And I actually do remember feeling very moved. And I think you kind of know when you think you're grateful that everything has sort of fallen into place because you don't think it's you on the screen, it's somebody else. And you're just in the story. And that's always the best gift for an actor, to be able to just disappear away, and it's not you.
Now,
Um, yeah.
you there's another scene in this film, and I wish, and ladies and gentlemen, if you are an up and coming actor, you desire to act, maybe you're a seasoned actor, one of the biggest things you have to learn is timing. Now,
Mm,
in this scene, when you had gotten up and you're walking towards the door, and Hannah is actually now she's standing behind the counter.
mm,
So you're walking towards the door and you stopped, you
mm,
turned around, and you said to her, and this is where the most perfect timing plays into a scene to give it the impact it has to have. And you
mm.
say, "You were so loved." And you paused. It's that pause that causes the audience to go, "What?"
Mm.
And then we go, "Oh." And then because you allowed the audience to get the inside message of that line, it literally brought tears to my eyes.
Oh. Well, I actually was really feeling that at the time as well. And I think maybe we did have a lot of conversations about timing, I have to say, because as you said, it is a very subtle script, and timing was hugely important, even to the point of, am I picking that up on that line? Am I putting it down on that line? Do you think it's a good idea to, when I walk over here, should I, I mean, it was very interesting how we timed things and discussed that. But funnily enough, I think that moment was, I don't think it was discussed. I think it just happened. And I think we were really running out of time.
But
And
here's what made that
we
scene even
had,
more powerful.
so yeah, just
After
yeah, go
you
on.
said the line, you
Mm,
paused, you finished, the camera turns to Hannah
yeah,
Onslow.
yeah.
The look on her face,
Mm,
the way she swallowed and the way she exhaled told me she knew this was not an ordinary stranger.
mm, mm.
But both of you gave absolute brilliant
Oh,
performances for what I would say for many young actors to learn from.
oh wow. Oh wow. Well, look, thank you for really um breaking it down for me. I'm so grateful. No, seriously, because the interesting thing is you do what you do, and then it goes away and it gets edited, and there's the sound, and you pop in and you do some ADR and da da da, and you go on with your life, and they get on with theirs, and say, oh yeah, we put it all together now. It's got some really nice music, and it's looking good, and and actually that pink coat was a good idea, and and so you kind of get a bit at one remove because it becomes all kind of like, yeah, it's a job, it was nice, it was lovely to do. And I think what's beautiful is that when you set you uh, someone like yourself who has so much knowledge of film and is so interested in film and never lose your capacity for surprise and curiosity. And when you're able to articulate it, which you do with, just extraordinary insight, it's thank you. I mean, it's really humbling, actually, completely humbling. And I will now go back. I'm going to start looking at it. I'm going to do the
I mean,
deep dive.
I told
Deep.
Jack I want the whole world to see this film, and I told him, I said, there's about five short films a year that I see out of 200 that always stick with me. And I said,
Uh-huh.
this one is going to stick with me for a long time. I mean, I remember films back in 2023 that
Yeah.
are still amazing, those from last year and then this year, and the second time around is literally at the top of the. And I told Jack, I said, I even made the comment. I said, out of all of the short films I've ever seen, if I was to label a film with the word perfection, this is the
Mm.
one.
Well, you know what? I think Jack is a superb director, and I just hope that he gets his due and his chance. It's hard for them all out there. And it's very interesting that I'm finding myself increasingly drawn to working with emerging directors as well, because their film language when they're younger is incredibly sophisticated and they are doing things. Um, but actually, what's interesting about Jack, though, is that his storytelling is at that level of what I would call classic storytelling as well, which, I grew up with, with Stephen and everybody, that he's got that. He's really got that inner knowledge. It's innate in him, of how to tell a story. I do believe
Oh,
that.
it was perfect direction. It was a perfect
Yeah,
script.
yeah, yeah.
You and Hannah, perfect casting.
Oh, well,
The
that's so nice.
delivery of the dialogue, the
Yeah.
music score, the camera
Yeah.
movement, the framing. I mean, I sat there and I'm like, I cannot believe what it's.
Wow.
I mean, I felt so. I mean, I had a feeling that I couldn't even describe, that I wished that the whole world would see this film how I saw it.
Gosh. Well, I hope people do.
You know, and
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
again, I mean, I could put an adjective upon adjective upon adjective on this film, and it's the type of, and when I, ladies and gentlemen, this is the type of film that you need to see like I see. Don't just watch it and go, okay, that was a great 15 minutes and move on. You need to sit there like a sponge and absorb every line, every movement, every angle, every emotion, and go, ah. Because here's the thing, Caroline, that kind of, that I was scratching my head one day. Somebody called this film sci-fi, and I'm like, no, it's not. This is not sci-fi. Because sure, there's a past future situation here, but it is such an emotional, it's a love
It's
story
a
in a
story.
way that's never been written.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, I hope Jack's ears are burning right now. Uh, I mean, I think, but I think the beauty is it actually, it is sort of cross genre. And I think what's very interesting is that, we've had like an award for best sci-fi. We've had an award for best love story. I mean, it's great. It's like, yeah, just keep going. Just like, let's mop them all up. But Hannah, thank you. I mean, yeah, without her, none of this could have happened, because I think it's so lovely when you find another actor who is so generous and so subtle themselves and so fabulous. And she's really young too. And who'll go, you can go on that journey together and you can totally trust each other. And so yeah, I mean, I got incredibly lucky because she's just,
Well,
you
I told
need a bit
Jack,
of soul at the other side of the camera, and we both that's what we do. That's our job. We give, you know.
Well, and I told Jack, I said this. I said, here's something that I noticed. I said when Caroline and Hannah were sitting at the table, and then there was the close up on Hannah. I said I paused it for a moment. I said I know this probably won't make sense to most people, but I sat there staring at it, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. So I told Jack, I said, you may not know this. I said, but your contrast of the characters was perfect. I said, Caroline with blonde, Hannah with red hair. I
Red.
said, here's the thing. That I said, this would have never worked if she was a brunette. I said, because of the lighting and the colorization and the cinematography, I said the contrast between Caroline and then you show Hannah, I said, if you look at her hair in that shot and the background, I said, it only works. I said, that's the only color that will work. I said, if you had a brunette or somebody that had ebony hair, I said, the emotion and the thought would have never been the same.
Isn't that interesting? I do. Well, you know, they do always talk about balance, you know, in casting and all that kind of thing. And, you know, perhaps we don't really give it enough thought, but it is very true. She does also have fantastic hair. Damn her. I mean, look at me. But also, it was kind of, in a way, it's quite fun. You know, you get to a certain age, it's like, it really doesn't matter. It's great, you know, whatever you need to do. I was like, get girl, wet again, wet again, wet again. You know, oh, is it?
Well,
But
I want to ask you
there's
about a.
freedom. There's freedom to that. There's so much freedom to just, you know, be, you know, looking dragged through a hedge backwards. It's fantastic.
Well, I've got to ask you because I saw an independent feature film. I had the opportunity to interview Freddie MacDonald because you were in the
Oh yes,
indie film So
thank
Torn.
you, because I wanted to talk about Freddie because when I was saying emerging directors, because also, have you seen his short films? He won the student Oscar for his short film, and
That's
his
right.
short
He
film,
did win the student Oscar. But you know how I learned about Freddie MacDonald?
yeah.
I learned about him from my friend and your friend Kay Callan.
Okay.
And she goes, because we email each other all the time, and she goes, you know, Caroline was great in that film. I said, I know. I said, I know. And what was it? Okay, this is my question to you
Very
about.
different character, let's face it.
Oh, completely different character. But I want to ask because here is a full length feature film filmed in Switzerland, and
Mm.
what is it like back in the day of being in a big budget studio film versus an independent feature film? You know, Hollywood has changed.
Oh, yeah, look, you know what? The thing is, I've done so many, you know, small, low budget movies. I mean, the beauty of being able to be given the gift of being able to do studio films was also for me to be able to go elsewhere and make small films, because that, you know, because you'd been in something, then it allowed them to say, okay, well, maybe you know, we can cast her in this, and so you can do something that, you know, is you know, just kind of takes your heart. And you know, having the UK, you know, when think about it, when I started, we only made 14 films a year. We now make like 400 because, you know, of all the, you know, the
Streaming.
grant funding and everything else, and the tax credits and the way things are financed in a completely different way. But it was very hard to make a movie in, you know, the kind of, I suppose, late 80s when I was, you know, starting. And so we did a lot of television. And, you know, you work for the BBC, you know, there's no such thing as a trailer. You know, that you barely, you know, you're lucky if you get a chair. You know, I was raised just sitting on the side of the road, you know, finding on something, someone going, okay. But so, yeah, but also, you know what, big budgets doesn't necessarily mean that life is simple or easy. And I always joke that I've done two of the most, actually, maybe, yeah, two of the most extreme films ever. It's like, you know, extreme movie making: Cliffhanger and White Squall. And Cliffhanger, you are up 12,000 feet every single day on top of a mountain. Everything's in camera, pretty much. A certain amount, of course, it was, we were in the studio for Cinecittà for, certain things. Most of it was on the mountain. And it's freezing cold. It's, you're lucky if you can get a meal sometimes because, things went wrong and, sorry guys, no food until, whenever. Um, you dangerous. The same White Squall with Ridley, we were on a tall ship, and that was, God, how many? It was me, Jeff Bridges, and a whole bunch of boys. And we were on that ship every day because he was never really certain what scene he wanted to shoot. So we would get up, we'd be up at 6 o'clock in the morning, we'd go out to the boat, and we'd be there until it got dark, which fortunately in the Caribbean is about 6 p.m. too. So it was a 12-hour day, not an 18-hour day, which can often happen in, the movies. But that was extreme. And then, of course, we're in the tank in Malta, and we've got we're doing the storm sequence, and the boat's on a gimbal, and it's going around like this and around like that. And Ridley, of course, he's put jet engines all the way around the tank as well. The tank also has got a wave machine that dumps thousands and thousands of gallons of water to give the waves. Um, and then you're hanging off the side of the ship, with water pouring all over you, trying to kind of save someone. It's actually a great scene. And you come back out and you're dripping wet and it's ghastly, and you go over and you go. And actually, I remember it was my fault. I said to Ridley, it doesn't really look dangerous enough. I think I need to go down another rung. And he went, yeah, good idea, cigar. Yeah, good idea, love. Go do it. So I did. And I let go. I mean, I because there was all this stuff going on, and I slipped, and literally I ended up going under the ship and then coming up, and I thought, I think I'm drowning here. Now, of course, they did have guys who were ready, who had the scuba equipment and everything to come swooping in case. But I got hit on the head. However, it was quite something. And then I remember, he said, yeah, that's the one. Oh, God. So, yes, I mean, yep, I guess there was a budget, but, what we were doing some of the time, and, big budget just might mean longer days shooting. You've just got, if it's a shorter budget, it's like, guys, we've only got 2 to 3 weeks and that's it, we're hitting it. But with a bigger budget, it's like, okay, we're going for maybe 3 to 6 months. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're paid that much more.
Well, it was like what's funny is back in the day when they used to shoot on film. I know that when Robin Williams did Miss Doubtfire, they
Yeah,
still have, this is crazy, 2 million feet of film of just his outtakes.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. And Marsha probably has got them in a warehouse
You know
somewhere.
how expensive film is? I don't think Kodak would even ship 2 million feet of film to anybody.
Yeah, it's expensive, but the irony is that digital's super expensive as well because you've got so many people working on a whole bunch of computers doing their thing, and it takes forever. They've got to be paid. So ironically, and I really, really admire Quentin Tarantino for this and a bunch of other directors because there is something about the alchemy of film because it is a process. So it is a chemical and there is a kind of magic that somehow that light achieves. So thank goodness that we're not losing it and film is coming back. And of course, my husband, who's worked a lot with Terry Gilliam, sometimes you'd shoot on film and then you'd do digital intermediate. And so it could actually then go and be, seen in the cinemas on digital, but it would have been shot on film. Because of course it's all about the lighting as well. So I'm not so sure. Yes, 2 million's a lot, but again, very big budgets. That was the thing with Robin, though, and this was the beauty of Hook and the beauty of being able to work that way. And that's the beauty of a big budget. Is Stephen would just leave the camera running, which of course on digital you can do now, but you know, you do of course have the cards and they do stop and you're like, whoops. Um, but he'd just leave it running. And so you would just start again and then make something else up and then something else up. And, you know, that is when you get a chance to really find something. And also sometimes, yes, take after take after take can allow you to dig, so that when he wants that close up, when he wants that there, he's got it. And you know, so often now in our experience, the problem is that there isn't enough time for coverage. You know, it's like, you know, 3 or 4 setups, boom, 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 let's go. And often what it's doing is it's actually losing, you know, the chance for the actor to tell the story that really should be told. Um, but I can bore for Britain or bore for America on any of this stuff. I mean, you know, it's kind of a pet thing of mine,
So
because
I mean, what was it like working with Freddie MacDonald because he's young?
fantastic. And I would say Jack and Freddie really inhabit the same universe in terms of storytelling, in terms of what they're capable of. I mean, So Torn has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, I
Well,
told Freddie, I said, I want to see a sequel.
I do too. I do too, and I damn well want to be in it. Um, I mean, Grace was hilarious. I mean, I think what was the interesting thing about that film as well is that because it's sort of actually a very mixed genre, you kind of, you know that, you know, at one point I said, I think I'm a bit grand guignol. I mean, literally pushing into that place of a kind of, you know, because there's, you know, the other thing is you've got a very sort of naturalistic central performance, and she's absolutely amazing. Um, and then you know, you've got Kay doing it. We're all this kind of mad cast of characters, sort of, you know, a little bit Coen Brothersy as well. And I know that they think his work is amazing, as well, and quite rightly. And you know, there's a little. It's so he's totally his own because of the model making as well. Which and of course you mustn't take his dad out of this mix
No,
either.
no, no. I know he had a big part in
Fred
this.
and Freddie. And Freddie and Fred, they write together. And Fred is also the model maker as well. So much and you know, Fred was also producing. So I think it's actually rather amazing to see a father-son um, team. I mean, you know, you have the brothers teams and you know there's something else, but and you often have a husband wife team even, but a father son, and I think the dynamics in that family they're amazing. I mean, how you can, I mean, making movies are hard enough, you know. Yes, even though Switzerland, and I'm sure they told you why Switzerland, because you know Freddie's half Swiss, and you know his dad promised him when he took him there when he was a teenager, and he was like, "Don't take me away from Hollywood." He said, "Don't worry, we will make movies," and they started making their first shorts there, and they have a kind of group of people who they could tap into, to make this movie in a kind of extraordinary wonderland, nowhere land. And you know, we really were in Heidi Land. It was so beautiful. We were very lucky with the weather as well, but also it was a complete sort of family affair. Um, and the crew all we took over this old school, and it was partly studio and partly kind of dorm for all the crew, and that's where we ate, and you know there was the makeup. I mean, it was so smart. Just find a place where everyone can be, and you know what you're limiting of course is, you know, what always costs on a movie is it's not necessarily the stuff that goes on screen, it's transport, accommodation, you know, food, uh, production design. You know, they're the big ticket items. Um, and so, you know, they put the cast sort of a bit down the hill, which in this very lovely, they're very kind to us, hotel, um, and Bad Ragaz, which actually is a spa town, so it even has a spa, and you're able to go. quite amazing hot springs that were like natural 32 degrees. Uh, and then, the crew were all at the top of the hill. And I swear we shot in that village. I mean, when we're walking along and we go to that little cafe place, that literally was just down there. Um, it was just brilliant because all that stuff you didn't need to spend money on, and they got it for a song.
Well,
So very,
you know
very
the
good.
cafe scene? The
Yeah,
cafe
my
scene,
favorite.
Freddie told me, he goes, everything that you see there, I think it took him what, almost a whole day to set that up, and it actually
Mhm.
worked.
Yeah, yeah,
So
worked
people
amazingly.
would, so ladies and gentlemen, if you see So Torn, there's a cafe
Please.
scene towards the end of the film. You need to watch it because everything you see actually happened.
Yeah, do we talk about the thread? Can we talk about the
Well,
thread? Are we allowed to?
there's the thread, and it was funny because I told Freddie, I said, you created a new superhero.
Yes. Yes, I want to see her back doing more things with thread. And everything was in camera. And I remember that the very beginning I said, so how are you going to do that coin? I suppose that's going to be some kind of digital effect or whatever. And they went, it was just brilliant. Um, uh, Fred, his dad, lifted up a piece of cardboard. So it was two pieces of cardboard stuck together with a sort of ramp, a cardboard ramp going down. And one side said, this way up, and the other one side said, don't lose. Just and I said, so what are you doing? And they said, oh yeah, it's quite clever really. And they got a coin and they put it in the top, and it rolled down and it rolled out and it went around. And ironically, the first time they tried it, it worked beautifully. And then they went, oh shit, did anyone shoot that? I said, I'd actually grabbed my phone and I was like, I did, but not, you don't want it on an iPhone. It was extraordinary. And so we then had a few more goes, and so I was able to leave for the night. We're done. And I came back the next day and I said, so how long did it take you? Were you up? I hope you weren't up late. And they went, 3 o'clock in the morning. So they literally worked for like the next 5 or 6 hours just trying to get this to do practically something that happened
Why is
on.
it always the test shots are always the perfect ones?
I don't know, maybe because it's, sod's law, or it's just you're not thinking,
Just
you're
turn the
not
camera on even during a test shot because it may be the only chance you
that
get.
might be the only one. And that's, but often that's the case as well with, rehearsals and things. You go, God, oh God, I wish I just nailed that line there. It just had enough sort of fizz and it was just thrown away and the timing was perfect. And I've never quite been able to get that again. So, actors have that problem too.
Well, do you have any new films or roles coming up?
I've got, oh, this is really fun. It's an Italian film called Ferrine, or Beasts of Prey. And again, actually, a fairly young director who again did another brilliant short. Um, and Andrea. Andrea. Sorry, it'll come back to me. And we shot that actually more or less around the same time as this. So that was actually one of my worries the second time around, was that I was going to be stuck in Torino and not be able to come in. And we did actually have to kind of slide the dates a bit. And I just managed. And I think I then did the 3 days on second time around. And then I think I had to go back to Torino. But I play a big game hunter who is illegally importing wild animals into Italy. And one night I lose a predator, a kind of really amazing South American panther. So I have to start searching, obviously, for my predator, and then I discover I'm not just looking for an animal predator, I'm looking for a human predator as well. So it's quite fascinating and a really, really interesting, amazing story. And yeah, I mean, really fun because, I get the gun. I get that gun, I get the riding boots, I get all the big game hunter stuff as well. And of course, I was very, very keen to be speaking Italian because I do speak Italian. But of course, the problem is in terms of making sure that it goes internationally, they always want to have the English as well, so they just kept saying no, 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 speak in English, no, 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 speak in English. No, 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 ma scusami, no, no, io devo parlare in italiano anche, no, no, no. Nope. I think I'm allowed 2 words, and all I basically, it sounds like I say si and no, and that was like, I think anybody could say that. I wanted to show my chops, so not allowed to in that one. But I'm really hoping it's going to come out soon. It'd be great. And then I am actually writing something which is really fun. I'm going to sort of go back to the producing anvil a bit. And yeah, just sort of waiting for all those things to start kind of trickling in. So still loving it, still active. I've always plowed my own furrow a bit. I've always been slightly more interested in telling the stories and being there on set and not really sort of worrying about anything else.
Well, maybe you should write a short film.
I'm writing, listen, I've already written one feature, and now this one I'm doing is a feature too. But actually, I think unfortunately, because it's a trial as well, it might need to be a bit longer. So it might have to be a TV series. But I think, to be honest, writing a short film is so incredibly difficult, just like writing short stories are. I think I'd just rather go for the 120 pages.
Yeah, you have a little bit more time to stretch out the scenes a bit.
Well, yeah, but also it's like, I think when I produced my first film, which I wrote, and actually I discovered that basically in order to get it done, you basically have to produce it too. But I really, really enjoyed the producing side. I can hand me a finance plan, and I'll yeah. And uh, I made a decision then, which, because I know how hard it is to get your work seen. And the decision I made was, if I'm going to make a film, it's going to be a film with a proper budget where people are employed properly, and paid the, union wages. And I will be hiring people who can help me sell this film. So we can do the pre-sales so that everything is sort of properly done and dusted. And I don't have to go cap in hand through a whole bunch of loops later, once I've made the film, trying to get people to see it, because you've got the distribution. And I do think that's incredibly important. And I've seen people work just as hard on a short film, Jack and others, and the amount of time and effort it takes. So I just thought, well, I think if I'm going to be expending that much time, I think I might like to make a feature. Of course, it came up bang in the middle of COVID. But we did get our US theatrical release, and it did go on to platforms and everything else, and it got some lovely reviews in Variety and Hollywood Reporter, and Brian Cox I love, and Olga Kurilenko and Claes Bang. I mean, the most amazing cast. Asad Boab. It's a beautiful film called The Bay of Silence. Check it out, guys. But it really gave me the bug as well, because I call it from pen to paper to point of sale. And as actors, we are only there for a certain moment of time. And often we're I like being part of the whole process. I mean, I think partly because, of course, my husband's a cinematographer. So I've often been around a table with directors and, production designers, and sort of talking more about the nuts and bolts of movie making. And, they all hate actors too. everyone hates them. God, we're all spoiled with this, with that. So I think maybe also it was just like a kind of like, well, can I just prove to you that we're not all that bad and that maybe we can actually, do it too. We're not just, just turning up and doing the twiddly bits and moaning about our hair, or, I don't like my coffee. And, actually we're prepared to be at the coal face as well.
Well,
So
I love the world of film. I know you do.
I do.
And I mean, ladies and gentlemen, Caroline Goodall, from Steven Spielberg to Ridley Scott to Jack Howard to Freddie MacDonald, and so many films in between. But there's a film you're going to have to see, and it's the short film, The Second Time Around, which is one of those films that once you see it, you want to watch it again. Now, the film left me speechless in so many ways. And the film starts on a rainy night. While closing a cafe, a waitress is confronted by a mysterious older woman. And that sense of mystery is carried throughout the film and never lets you go. Now, every element of this film fits perfectly together: the rain, the cafe, two people who have never met, or maybe they have met, and a small yet intimate personal conversation that leaves the audience hanging on every word. Now, I don't want to give too much away, but it is a cinematic experience that you have to see and feel, mainly due to the brilliant writing as well as the brilliant, stellar performances of Caroline Goodall and Hannah Onslow. Now, I've seen hundreds of short films each year, and there are usually less than 5 films that capture me that I will never forget. The Second Time Around is one of those films, and it is definitely in my top 5 this year. And ladies and gentlemen, I mean, look, I've seen this film so many times, I get the same sense of wonder and awe every time I watch it. So, is The Second Time Around a perfect film? You already heard me say it today. I think it actually is, in every single element, and also in every way. The Second Time Around, well, it's Oscar qualified. It's also BAFTA qualified. So we're going to see where this film goes in this amazing double journey during awards season. And well, again, an amazing, perfect short film. And as I say, I speak from the heart, and I would suggest many of my Academy member friends seek this film out in the portal, watch it, and let me know if you feel the same way I do about it. And Caroline, I want to thank you so much for your time today and sharing your past and present film career with me. And again, as with one of the most incredible cinematic short films I've ever seen.
Oh, can I just quickly say happy birthday yesterday to Julie Andrews, of course, because we did Princess Diaries together, and it's like she was
Oh,
amazing.
absolutely. And yeah, and that is a whole nother set of films. And is there any word that they may ever do another one?
I think they keep talking about it. I think it's probably up to Anne and Julie. We know that, we lost Gary. So, probably kind of, not the same director, maybe not the same. But, yes, I'd love to see another one. And yeah, maybe they'll ask me back.
Well, yeah, well, it's got such a huge fan base. I can't see why they wouldn't bring another one out. But again, Caroline, I want to thank you so much for an absolute enjoyable time with you today.
I've had the best time. Honestly, it's such an honor. You are incredible. And the words you've said about this film, I'm blown away. I truly am. I think I might start crying. But um, thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, absolutely everybody who was involved. And we did. We just had a beautiful crew. Some of them very young and raw, and everyone just did everything they could to make it work. And of course, the editor as well, who I think did an incredible job. And the music. So anyway, I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Well, no, that's good. And ladies and gentlemen, if any of you are up and coming filmmakers and you need a film to watch to learn every element how to do it right, The Second Time Around needs to be on your list because hey, the short film is becoming the new feature film. More people are understanding the importance and the power of the short film, so make sure you get to see the second time around, directed by Jack Howard, starring Caroline Goodall as well as Hannah Onslow. So check it out. And ladies and gentlemen, well, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Audible, and more. And remember, you'll either see me at the movies or on the red carpet.
This is the first time I've been back here since. And I thought about it. And I'd wanted to for a while. I just didn't think I could. Didn't know what I'd do if I did. Hiya, love.
Oh, well, we're closed now, so I shouldn't really be letting anyone in.
I won't be long. Can you keep a secret?